Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Beth Stover. I'm with the Department of Family and Support Services. I'm one of the assistant directors in the Children's Services Division. And this is the Family and Community Outreach RFP. And I'm going to introduce my colleagues before we continue. So Julia.
Hi, I'm Julia Talbot. I'll be discussing how to actually go through the physical process of making an application with the RFP after Beth is finished talking about the RFP and the content of the program itself. With us also is Tom Mose. Tom?
Hi, everyone. My name's Tom Mose. I'm Program Development Coordinator at the Department of Family and Support Services, and I work on Beth Stover's team. And I wanted to go to the next slide so we can go over some housekeeping. As you all know, we're doing this webinar remotely today, and we really are happy that a lot of you have joined us. So due to the volume of the participants, everyone's been placed on mute. We can submit your questions via the question box, and we'll respond to questions after going through all the slides. And you'll find the question box in your control panel, or I call it the dashboard, to your right-hand side, and that will prompt us when you ask a question. And also, we'd like to have you use the question box to notify us of any technical issues. So right now, we're all showing our screen, and you should be able to hear us. And if you'd like, you can use the question box to indicate right now that you can see the screen and that you can hear us. We'd appreciate that. And I'll only interrupt Beth or Julia when we're talking in case there's a technical issue or I see someone type in the question box that they have something is not working right. And I just see from one of the participants that all good, so that sounds like they can hear us and that they can see us. So with that, I'll pass back to Beth, and she can go over the agenda and start the presentation for you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tom. So today's agenda, welcome. We have introduced ourselves. I'll do it again. My name is Beth Stover. I'm one of the assistant directors at Children's Services Division at DFSS. I'm with my colleague, Julia Talbot, who is one of our colleagues in the Contracting and Procurement Division, and Tom Mose, who works with me at CSD. And we'll be hosting this webinar today. So the purpose, we'll go over the purpose of the RFP. We'll give you a little bit of background information. We'll talk a little bit more in depth about the scope and the program description and the expectation of the contractor. We'll talk about some of the selection criteria that we'll be applying when we evaluate the applications. We'll look at the timeline, and we will talk, especially Julia will spend a lot of time talking about how to actually apply in the e-procurement system, and then we'll take questions about anything related to this RFP or using the e-procurement system that we can answer. So without further ado, let's go to the next slide. So we're seeking one contractor who can provide subject matter expertise, training, and technical assistance in the area of grassroots outreach and parent leadership and advocacy development, on the other hand, to us, the Department of Family and Support Services, and our Chicago Early Learning programs, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about in a couple of slides. So this vendor is going to be working directly with parents and with some of our direct service providers in subjects related to family and community outreach. So again, the purpose of the RFP is to train and deploy current and former Chicago Early Learning Head Start parents and community members to conduct grassroots outreach and recruitment for our Chicago Early Learning and especially our Head Start programs. And at the same time, and through that activity, build those parents and community residents' leadership and advocacy skills. Next slide. So The support service contractor is to support Chicago early learning programs and especially Head Start. Chicago early learning programs administered by the Department of Family and Support Services are community-based organizations, and they are funded by Head Start, Early Head Start, Head Start Child Care Partnership, and Early Head Start Expansion. And that suite of Head Start grants have a very strong emphasis on developing parent leadership skills. And they also are partially funded through the state through the Early Childhood Block Grant, Preschool for All, and Prevention Initiative. We have about 100 direct service delegate agencies at about 350 sites. So all of our services for children and families are provided by these delegate agencies. We don't provide any direct services from CSD. We administer the program through this network of delegate agencies in community, and we provide support for them in order to fulfill the many Head Start program performance standards that are associated with the program. We have center-based models. We have licensed family child care home models. We have home-based home visiting models. Our models are full year, full day, and sometimes part day. Of course, right now, all of these services, well, actually, I take that back. We have some remote services and we have some in-person service if they're following the latest DCFS child care licensing requirements, which is usually a reduced classroom teacher-child ratio. Typically, we serve about 15,000 children and families every year. And this, like I said earlier, the Head Start program has a really strong family and community engagement component. This is from the understanding that parents are children's first teachers, that parents will be with that child through a lifetime, and that by providing the parent with support to develop their self-efficacy, their leadership skills, and things like that, they'll be able to advocate for their children and their communities, not just right now while their child is in early learning programs, but as that child goes through elementary and high school years, etc. So this RFP is especially concerned with that family and community engagement, parent development piece, as well as grassroots recruitment activities. Next slide. And so I'm going to kind of just say again what I just said, which is these are the goals. First, we want to increase the enrollment of children and families in CEL programs, especially our Head Start programming. We want to especially focus on children and families that are from hard to reach communities due to socioeconomic isolation, due to community violence, due to immigration status, due to housing issues and the like. We want to make sure that communities understand the importance of early learning programs, how they benefit children and families and communities. We want to strengthen the ability of our Head Start parents and our former Head Start parents to advocate for their children and their families and their communities. And we want to improve family and child outcomes as articulated by the Head Start parent, family, and community engagement framework, which was included in the RFP. You can see it. There's a whole column dedicated to supporting parent leadership and developing parent leaders. Next slide. So our current state and priorities for improvement. We want to make sure that families understand the services that are available in their community-based agencies, especially Head Start and its benefits. Head Start has a pretty stringent enrollment requirement, so it's really important that we meet our enrollment goals. But the children and families we want to enroll are often those that are hardest to reach. Because they're affected by various challenges, transportation barriers, language barriers, immigration status, deep poverty, community violence, misinformation or knowledge about the program, et cetera. And so grassroots outreach to families and communities is one way for peer-to-peer conversation and learning about early learning programs, Head Start, Chicago Early Learning, and how they can benefit children and communities. And so, so our other priority is increasing our pool of parent leaders and advocates that are going to be able to go out into community now and to continue that work into the future. Next slide. So our target population. So for the grassroots teams or the parent ambassadors, we want current and former Chicago Early Learning Head Start parents. And we're also interested in community residents who are representative of Head Start eligible families. And so what I mean by that, that they're either culturally representative, linguistically representative, socioeconomically representative, racially representative, ethnically representative. So for grassroots outreach, we're looking at Chicago communities with high rates of income and categorically eligible Head Start families. To be eligible for Head Start, either your income is under 100% of the federal poverty line, or you're categorically eligible because the child you're going to be enrolling is in foster care, homelessness, TANF, eligible, and the like. But then on top of that, one of the things that we do in Head Start is we create selection criteria to ensure that the children and families that are most vulnerable in our communities are prioritized for enrollment. And that's where we kind of get into families that are in deep poverty. Typically, we mean about 50% of the federal poverty line by that. Families who are experiencing community violence, who are homeless, and the like. Next slide. So the requirements. So first I'm going to talk about the required qualifications. So you have to be able to demonstrate your staffing capacity and credentials and expertise to conduct these services. We want you to identify a project manager who will be the point of contact and be kind of the main hinge for the program. That project manager should demonstrate some sort of previous experience in project management and delivering grassroots outreach services and working with community members and or Chicago Early Learning and or Head Start parents. So that's kind of broad, but we want somebody who kind of knows this terrain a little bit, and so is going to be able to hit the ground running, providing tutoring and managing and recruiting parent ambassadors, and also understanding how grassroots engagement works. Then we'd like you to identify up to 5 full-time equivalent support staff who would be supporting the project manager and the parent ambassadors, and they're going to be helping to strategize and conduct the grassroots outreach. The support staff may end up coming up through parents if we want to grow leaders within these parent ambassador teams. And so whenever there's the potential for a parent ambassador to move into leadership positions or support staff positions, that's great. You have to be able to pass a criminal records check. That's Head Start funding requirements. Maintain confidentiality, HIPAA, FERPA, of people that are contacted in the community. And then, of course, we want to make sure that we have teams that that are reflective of the communities we serve. Next slide. Next, oh, there we go. Okay, so here are the required activities. Number 1, recruit, train, and engage parent ambassadors. So what we would like to see this vendor do is recruit and train parents, current, former, and community members in some combination to be able to conduct this grassroots outreach to the sort of communities where we can find Head Start eligible children and families. The support service agency will be required to design and implement A system to recruit, train, and supervise the parent ambassadors. The system must include selection criteria for prioritizing parents for hire. So if you have more applicants than you need from our current agencies or from the community, how are you going to choose who to hire? The parent ambassadors should be integral parts of grassroots outreach teams, and when appropriate should contribute to strategizing how to engage peers, children, and families. And they should move into team leadership team leadership positions. Like I said, these parent ambassadors should be representatives of the communities they serve. They should receive some sort of monetary stipend or wages. They should meet for weekly team supervision, get their weekly assignments. Those are also an opportunity to provide formal and informal training, mentorship, leadership to the parent ambassadors. Much of this is outlined in the cost proposal. I'll say that now. These parent ambassadors are going to have to be trained in community organizing and leadership, in advocacy techniques, in grassroots outreach techniques, and the like. So that's the core activity of this support service contractor, is to engage and train these parent ambassadors, or should I say this is the first half of the core activity. And then the second half, I think, is the next page, Tom. Conduct the grassroots outreach. So you train the team, you go conduct the outreach. So these outreach teams, you know, they may initially especially have some of the organization's staff as part of the team, because you know, early on it's a mentoring and coaching kind of situation. And part of this grassroots outreach strategies, we need to see efforts to inform families and communities about the importance of early learning, supporting families in applying for Chicago early learning programs, especially our Head Start community-based programs. We expect the outreach to be heaviest during our peak recruitment season, which is through April through September of each year. And it should include weekday, weeknight, and weekend hours. Of course, how that works in a COVID era is something that's very flexible. And so we will take that, you know, right now, grassroots outreach looks a little different than it would perhaps potentially next summer, because we don't know what's going to be happening next summer. So I would play the field there and take into consideration both a socially distanced season and a not so socially distanced season. There should be some kind of ability to track success. We have a lot of the outreach materials that our strategic communication vendor provides for us, and you'll be able to use that to do some of the outreach. And then the parent ambassadors should have core outreach teams with a membership of 20 to 25 parent members working a minimum of 24 hours a week. And there should be 10 to 12 Saturday team members working a minimum of 6 hours a week. And like I said, when parent ambassadors should be promoted into team leadership positions when appropriate in order to exercise and develop their leadership skills. These kinds of benchmarks and hourly benchmarks are kind of spelled out in the cost proposal. Next slide. Developing grassroots outreach strategies. So that's where we expect the vendor to be the subject matter expert and also pull on parent knowledge and parent understanding of their communities and how to reach these families. And they will be expected to develop the strategies. There'll be some coordination, we'll get to this in a later slide, with other pieces of the Chicago Early Learning recruitment team. But the sort of grassroots, door-to-door canvassing of neighborhoods, getting out in community, in local communities, so not like big community like Taste of Chicago, local communities on the block, That's the expectation for this vendor. Next slide. So and this vendor will be part of determining, looking at some of the data and determining where to go and what communities to prioritize for this kind of outreach. And in that, they're going to collaborate with us at DFSS, the Strategic Communications and Recruitment Support Service Provider, the local child care resource and referral agency, which is Illinois Action for Children, and the mayor's office, and CPS to some extent, although this particular outreach is really focused on community-based organizations. So this vendor is going to participate in, collaborate with these different entities in order to ensure that the City of Chicago's outreach strategy is coordinated and is reaching everywhere it needs to reach. Next slide. Right, so I'm saying this again, collaborate with the local child care resources and referral agency, because that's where people call when they want childcare. They run our hotline, so we can get data about where calls are coming from, et cetera, that can help inform where we're going to go out and where the vendor should go out into community. And during the height of the recruitment season, we have citywide recruitment meetings, and the support service this support service contractor, the Family Community Outreach Support Service Contractor, is one piece of this cross agency effort. So there'll be the support service the FCO support service contractor, Family Community Outreach Support Service Contractor. There'll be the Strategic Communications and Recruitment Contractor there, the mayor's office, DFSS, the Child Care R&R, Action for Children, and CPS. And so together during this recruitment season is when these collaboration happens and the real intensive grassroots outreach occurs, especially I would say for the grassroots outreach portion, especially in the summer. We find that a lot of the families who enroll in Head Start and Chicago Early Learning community-based agencies, that the big push for this is in July and August. So the FCO will be deploying their parent ambassador teams that they have ready, that they've been training, and get the word out. All right, next slide. Performance goals and outcomes. So our outcomes is we want to see increased enrollment of children, family, and cell programs, especially Head Start, and especially in communities prioritized as part of the grassroots outreach activities. We also want to see these parent ambassadors participate in agency leadership roles. Every Head Start agency has a program governance structure that has parent committees and policy committees who have a critical role in developing the program, in approving grant documents, in designing certain elements and components of the program. And so we would like to see parent ambassadors who, we would like to see parent ambassadors recruited from those bodies, but also parent ambassadors returning to agencies to lead these bodies as long as their children are still in Head Start or coming back as community representatives to these bodies. Outputs. So for outputs, we want to be tracking the number of contacts, doors knocked on, events attended or canvassed, communities canvassed, parent ambassador trainings, and the number of parent ambassadors utilized each quarter. Next slide. Selection criteria. So here is what we will evaluate the applications on. The first one is the strength of the proposed program. It's worth 30 points. You'll have to clearly define how you'll provide grassroots outreach within the framework of the RFP. You'll have to define how you'll recruit and train. We want to see that you have a plan for that for the parent ambassadors. how you will use input from parent and parent ambassadors for grassroots strategies. And we want to make sure that your proposal aligns with best practices in the field. So that's 30 points for the strength of the proposed program. Next slide. Program performance, outcomes, and quality. We demonstrate your past experience, conducting grassroots outreach, working in community, provide any information about notable accomplishments in providing services to the target population or doing this work. You're free to attach reports, any kind of documentation that demonstrates your past experience and outcomes. We would like to see some experience providing training and technical assistance in developing parent leaders, in developing advocacy skills to adult learners. And we want to see some experience collecting and managing sensitive data, because that is part of the enrollment, is working with family information. Next slide. Organizational capacity, this is 30 points. We want to see qualified and experienced staff as required by the RFP. We want to see an adequate infrastructure to provide the services and to support monitoring of program expenditures and fiscal controls in alignment with the uniform guidance, the federal uniform guidance. We want to make sure that you have the adequate human resource capacity to hire and manage staff and subcontractors if necessary. Experience that has affected positive change through collaborations and partnerships. There's a lot of partners involved with our recruitment season each year, and we all work together. And then lastly, we want to see that your organization actually reflects and engages the diverse people of the communities it serves. In this case, we're basically trying to work with and recruit Head Start eligible parents, families, and the like in communities. Next slide, please. And lastly, reasonable costs, budget justification. There is a cost proposal that everyone has to fill out as opposed to a line item budget. So we want to see that you have the fiscal capacity to implement the proposed program. We want to see what kind of non-federal share you can leverage. Head Start requires a match, a non-federal match, either in kind or cash. So we're asking you questions about that, and reasonable implementation costs and funding requests relative to financial, human resources. We want to make sure that the budget supports the proposed scope of work or work plan. So a lot of what the program requires is outlined in the cost proposal that everyone has to complete and submit. Next slide. Attachments. So make sure you attach the reports or studies or any kind of documentation that shows your past performance in activities related to this RFP. That's a plus. Please provide resumes for key staff. Make sure you attach your budget or cost proposal for this program. There's a whole list of other documents that everyone who applies to the City of Chicago, regardless of the program, has to supply, like your SAM and proof of insurance, articles of incorporation, and the like. So please remember to include all of those pieces. They're all listed out in the RFP. Next. Selection and transition timeline. I think this is still me. Ta-da, it's October 21st. Here we are in our pre-proposal webinar. Due date to submit pre-proposal questions. So when you submit questions to us, we turn them into a RFP amendment that Julia will talk about. And so those would be due on October 29th. That seems really early. I think it's supposed to be something else, and maybe Julia, you can jump in later and talk about that. I think it was supposed to be hang on one second. The proposal is due on the 24th, so I think we need those by the 16th of November. Any written questions should be submitted by November 16th. Does that sound right, Julia?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
But we can discuss that later if you want to change the date.
What is the date?
October 29th.
Oh, all right, I'm sorry. Well, Julia here is the boss, so
So
yeah,
yeah,
questions in early, in other words.
we would prefer that you start your applications early. Obviously, if you have a question, we will answer the question. But the fact is that we cannot, every time you ask a question, and I have actually some questions that I want to insert into our question and answer period that I received online a few days ago. But every time we do a question, every time you have questions that we need to answer, we have to do amendments. And so, it's kind of a rolling. It's an artificial date. At some point, the October 29th would be great if you guys could submit all of your big questions to us at that point. But obviously, if it's after October 29th and you have a question, we'll still answer it.
Okay, so start early and submit your questions early. The applications are due November 24th.
The applications are due November 24th at 12 noon.
At 12 noon.
Which is the Tuesday before Thanksgiving.
Which is the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. And these contracts will begin December 1st. I'm not sure that's kind of beyond my expertise, the contracting piece, but they'll be issued, at least they can begin December 1st. They probably will not, because if you're submitting them on the 24th, we will not have made any decisions within 6 days.
Right. But we can, that's when
the fiscal year begins for Head Start.
Yes. So that's how we came up with that. It seems unlikely. Maybe it will happen. I'm not going to say anything more than that, but this is when the contracts the contract can start. And so that is the best date that we have at this point. So on the other hand, it does mean that we are motivated to make decisions and process your contracts quickly.
All right, next slide, Tom. I think that now we transition to Julia.
Yeah, here you go. So as I said, applications are due November 24th at 12 noon. I'm going to go through now basically stuff about how do you make an application in the city's fantastic e-procurement environment. It's an Oracle-based platform. It's not super intuitive in my opinion, but it is what it is. I will say this is sort of my spiel, and we can go on to the next slide here, Tom, that the city has been working in this e-procurement environment for about 3 years. A few things about it. We can track kind of what you're doing and what you're doing. We can track a lot of things in terms of, we don't generally, but we can look at it if we have to. We can see where you are in your application and when was the last time you logged in. The system does not really, in 3 years, it has never crashed. It certainly has never crashed because there was too many people applying at once. And I say that having sat through several years of, hundreds of people applying at once, and so that being said, a lot of that doesn't mean that your experience is going to be perfect. It does mean that a lot of the issues you might experience in interfacing with the e-procurement system have to do with your computer software and how it interacts with the e-procurement software. We have lots of people who can give you technical assistance, and I'll give you that the numbers a number of times in the part of this presentation. We have lots of people who can answer your questions, but as I was sort of talking through, we were ramping up to and discussing the application question due date and all this stuff. We say start early. We know that we do technical scope. They're complicated, they're complex, there's a lot of food for thought. They're rather, they're a lot of big concepts and a lot of little details, and you have to keep track of them all. We ask challenging questions sometimes, or that they're not just like, what's your name? We need to ask these questions so that we can make good decisions around the best person to do the work that we need to do, which is complex work involving vulnerable populations. And so it's really important to us that we get people who have the ability to conceptualize strong programs that really go deep and serve people who are vulnerable well. If you have never done business with the City of Chicago in e-procurement, you're going to need to register. Please do that now, like right now, just this second. I think everybody that I saw in terms of the attendees, I think you all look like you had accounts already, but I will stress, if you don't have an account, please register now. It will take within 24 hours to probably 72 hours. We say 3 to 5 business days. To be honest with you, usually it's more like 3, but I will say 5, because the minute you say 3 business days, it goes longer. After 3 business days, if you still haven't heard from us, I would start checking my spam or my junk files. A lot of stuff from e-procurement, because it's created or generated from a from a program, does go to junk files or spam files, and that includes me. So I say, check your junk. If you're looking for something and it hasn't been received, you can also always call the helpline. They can check up on where everything is at. But I would also check my spam or junk files. So that's a little bit about e-procurement. The system doesn't crash, which means you should start early. You should save often. We'd love to see you submit early. Nobody does, but we'd love to see it. And then in terms of organizing your thoughts around writing the application questions and preparing an application for us, I have said this many, many times. I say this in every webinar, in fact, which is, please read the narrative. Please read the RFP scope. We have written it to let you know what we're looking for. I know that they're dense documents. If I could do stand up around them, I would, or somehow make them a little bit more, I don't know, not engaging, but like fun. But they aren't, because in the end of it all, some of the work that we're asking people to do is difficult, challenging, but very important work. And the scopes reflect all of those things. The applications and the evaluation criteria and the evaluation instruments that we use all are pulled from the scope. The application questions relate to the selection criteria, and the selection criteria relates to the scope, and all of those things roll up into our evaluation instrument. And so if you are looking at a question and you don't really know what's going on, or you don't really understand it, look in the scope, in the RFP, look for the program descriptions, look at the evaluation criteria. Those are all things that will should be able to guide you in determining what it is that we're looking for. Or you can call or email Beth, and she will, she can help with some of that. But just remember, it's all we're looking for people we're looking for you to demonstrate to us that you are capable of doing the work, that you have innovative ideas about how to get this work done, and that you have experience that demonstrates to us that you are capable of getting it done in the time frame and in the budget constraints that we're offering. And and that there's room for innovation, there's room for creativity, and there's room for deep thought, but that there's also a lot of structure that we're looking for, and so let that be your guide. In terms of filling out the application itself, there's a 4,000 character limit, which includes punctuation and spaces for each response. So not 4,000 characters for the entire application, but just for each response. And so that won't be counted for you. So I always tell people, write your application questions in a different document, and then do the counts for for character counts, just to make sure you're not going over. e-procurement was built on the Internet Explorer browser, which was, of course, like it's kind of on its way out. It works on other browsers. It works on Chrome. It works on Firefox. Works in Safari. I've tried them. If you're having a problem when things are really glitchy and just not working, try it in Explorer, and that might solve some of your problems. The other pro tip I have is don't use the back button when you're scrolling in the e-procurement environment. I know I use the back button all the time, but I always regret it when I'm in e-procurement, because when you use the back button, it stops saving all your work. And then when you go to save it, you get an error message and realize that, you know, the 15 minutes of stuff you just did wasn't saved. And it was because of the back browser button. So there's a lot of incentive to remember that one, but so don't use that. So as I like to say, I mean, start early, save often, and let's go to the next slide. Okay, so we are talking about the application deadline. One nice thing about e-procurement is that if you're worried about getting your application in, you can submit this thing as often as you want up until November 24th at 12 noon, at which point you cannot much, you know, at 12:01, you're not going to be able to submit it. And the beautiful thing about e-procurement is that the minute that that deadline passes, it will take your application and suck it away, even if it isn't completed. It will just disappear, and you can't see, and you will not be able to see it. That's one of the reasons I tell people to build their application in a separate document, because actually once you submit it, and you're not going to be able to, you might be able to get a PDF of it, but you're not going to be able to get like a manipulatable file. So I say, like, you know, write the answers to the questions and put them in, and have your narrative, quote unquote, you know, the answers to your narrative questions in a separate document that allows you to manipulate them. And also so that you can see what you submitted. You have the opportunity to print out the application, but it's going to be in a PDF file. I find the format that is in to be a little cumbersome. So it's better just to have that other file, to be honest with you. So you can submit, if you submit prior to the deadline, you can be like, oh, wait a minute, I didn't do this, and you can pull it back. As I said, after that submission deadline passes, though, there is no way to get your application in unless we re-release the RFP. If we re-release the RFP, we have to basically make everybody who got their stuff in on time reapply. And so we do not like to re-release RFPs, and we really try not to re-release RFPs. As you'll see when we go through the next sections, I do say plan on taking your submission in 30 to 60 minutes to submit. It's not one of these like click and you're done. It's click and like walk through, you know, 6 screens and you might be done. You can call us if you have problems. For any programmatic questions about the scope, about what we're really looking for in terms of the qualifications of an applicant, if you need clarifications on something about the RFP, I would call Beth. If you have problems physically about, like, you know, e-procurement hates me, or I don't understand what it's doing, or I can't find this, please call me or call the e-procurement hotline, which is 312-744-4357. And or you can email us, and the email addresses are in other screens. We'll get to those, but you can email us and I will get back to you within 24 hours. The e-procurement hotline people will probably get back to you within 24 to 48 hours. We do keep a record of who calls. So, like, you know, if you call and leave a message, that's enough. I will call you back. I understand that you might be anxious, but trust me, I will, you know, if I didn't pick up the phone, it wasn't because I was avoiding you. I just was doing something else or talking to somebody else and giving them help. So, and I will get to you just as soon as I can. So again, save often, submit early, and let's go to the next slide. So if you are a new agency, you should be prepared to upload these documents into e-procurement. So it's the articles of incorporation, your affirmation letter from the IRS, basically showing that you are, you know, your business is recognized by the IRS and pays taxes, your DUNS number, and your CCR number, and then your certificate of good standing with a letter with the state of Illinois. These are all things that our contracts units need to be able to enter into a contract with anybody. So especially the IRS stuff, if you are applying for a 501c3, but you haven't gotten it yet, if you are applying for a FIN number, but you haven't gotten it yet, you really need to apply with a fiscal agent, because chances are, those applications take months and months to go through. Chances are we're probably going to move to contract prior, and we cannot contract with somebody who cannot do business. And we cannot contract with, if organization X submits the application, that's the organization we have to enter into a contract with. And so if you needed a fiscal agent, they needed to be named as part of the application. So I'm happy to talk to anybody about this particular logistics stuff if need be. If you are falling into this category where you don't have some of these documents, there are, aside from the IRS stuff, there are some workarounds we can do, but do contact us, and so that we can work this out so that you can submit an application that in fact is fundable should you be, should we pick you. Next slide. So again, if you are looking for other RFPs, training documents, all that kind of stuff, we put them on the DFSS website. If you have questions, you can do customer support at cityofchicago.org or call the helpline at 744-HELP-4352. If you are more of a visual learner and you don't really want to talk to anybody, there's a lot of training material, sort of PowerPoint, sort of step-by-step-y kind of things, or videos about how to manipulate and navigate the e-procurement web system. You can go to this website, and this PowerPoint will be released as part of our amendment. And so it should be available to you, or just, call the helpline, call me. I'm in my information's in the RFP itself, and I'm happy to send you whatever materials that will make this a more pleasant and successful experience. So next we're gonna go through two common, activities that you have to do, how to accept an amendment, and then after that, we're gonna talk about how to submit an application. So let's go to the next slide. So we're going to amend all of our RFPs because that's the way that we post the webinar. We answer questions, and I know that I was reading the questions when Beth was speaking. We answer our questions, and then if we need any clarifications, we'll probably provide a clarification about the question due date, that kind of stuff. That all gets rolled up into the amendment, and we'll attach the webinar and the PowerPoint associated with that to the amendment. And that way it's all part of the packet. So if you have not started an application prior to the amendment being released, you're gonna go, you'll go log in, and you'll get to this screen. You're gonna see, if you haven't started an application, you'll go to this actions bar on the right-hand side and go to create quote and then hit go. If you've already started an application, you basically just have to view the amendment history. And now there's going to be a couple of different screens that you have to walk through. Like basically, we issue an amendment, and e-procurement, what you have to walk through on this is demonstrating that you are aware of the amendment, you are aware of the content of the amendment, and that you accept responsibility for the changes or the clarifications in the amendment document. So it's fairly important, actually, that you should at least glance at what's in the amendment. I provide like a little one-sentence synopsis of the content, but if you really are looking for the nitty-gritty, because ultimately, say like, if we change the due date, we have to do an amendment, and you have to accept that amendment, and then you have to be responsible. So like, for the idea that you in fact know that the due date was changed. That's a very big example. Most of the things are much sort of pickier. But in the end of it all, this process is, as you will see, really is all about like making sure that you know what changes have been made, what clarifications have been offered, and that you take responsibility for understanding and accepting those clarifications as the landscape in which you are now going to operate in terms of doing your application. So let's go to the next screen. So you're going to begin the acceptance and acknowledgement process. In e-procurement, everything highlighted in blue really takes you to somewhere else. That's how you can avoid using that back browser button. So in this case, if you wanted to review the amended changes to the RFP, you're going to click on the area on the left-hand side that I've circled with the number 1. If you click on that number, that's going to take you to the newly amended document with the RFP page. There you can see sort of in the middle there's an amendment description. That's that little one sentence that I was talking about. In number 2, if you click on the review changes button, that's going to take you to the amendment document itself, which is a short document that basically says, here are the things that we've changed and gives you the comparison. And then after you've done those things, you will click on the acknowledge amendment button, which is circled number 3, which is in the lower right-hand side of the screen. And that will take you to the next screen, and which point you will accept your acknowledgement. So here you're going to click on this really small button on the right-hand side, accepting the terms and conditions of the RFQ and acknowledging that you have sort of read the amendment document and that you understand what's going on. And then you're going to hit the acknowledgement button on the right-hand side, which will take you to this next screen. We're going to go to step 4, where you confirm your acknowledgement. So, you've confirmed your acknowledgement. You say like, yes, I understand, again, and then you hit yes. If you hit no, it's just going to take you back to the screen where you have to read the amendment, just in case you were curious. So you're going to hit yes, and that will take you to this screen, that's step 5, where you confirm that you've acknowledged and you confirm the acknowledgement of your acceptance of the amendment, which you will hit yes again, and that will take you to this final thing where you understand that you accept the terms and conditions. This one you have to check the tiny box at the bottom of the left-hand side saying that you accept the terms and conditions of the acknowledgement of the acceptance of the amendment, and then you click either on the upper or lower right-hand side to accept, and this is the final step. So as you can see, there's a lot of steps to accepting the amendment. Most of it is just acknowledging that you've read the thing, and so I guess there's probably, after you go through this process, there's really should be no second thoughts in your mind about how responsible the city is going to be about we really expect you to really understand the amendment. Sometimes I really wish these things could be more fun, like, do a TikTok video that demonstrates your acceptance of an amendment. Anyway, here we go. So now we're going to go on to how to submit an application. As I indicated, sometimes it's not just like one of those like click and whoosh, it's all gone. No, e-procurement, never that fun. So we're going to go to how to submit an application. So you're going to start by saving, because if you're anything like me, and if you're writing grants, you probably are at least a little bit like me, you probably save things compulsively at this point. So you're going to save your draft, and then you're going to hit the continue button, and the continue button is going to put you into this next screen where it's basically going to review your application and be like, hey, here are some things that we don't understand, or places that you have not turned in information that we require. We're going to go through 2 common ones. In the next screen, this one is a very common one. It says that you didn't submit lines. You'll note that the lines under it says you must quote on it, we add at least one line in the RFQ, and then you look down and there's a little tab that says lines. You go in there. In this case, the lines, we don't actually require that you submit lines. As we have we always make you to complete and upload a cost proposal or a budget. and that the lines, we'd like you to just put placeholders on those so that we can use them later in the contracts, but you don't actually have to. It's more of an exercise in it's more of an exercise in what happens for the future than anything that has to do with the actual packet. But the packet isn't considered complete unless you put these placeholders in. So you just do that, and then you put in your placeholders and you hit save, and then you should be good. Here in step 4, I'm going to give you another common error message. And a lot of times when you go through, you're going to get like, you get 5 error messages of all the things that eProcurement isn't sure about. In this case, it's the quote value is required for the requirement first name. In eProcurement, the application questions are referred to as requirements, and the quote value is the 4,000 character limited text box in which you provide your answer. In this case, it's telling you that the requirement named first name, which is pretty obvious what that's asking for, was not filled out. So you go in, you find the requirement titled first name, and then you put in the quote, the answer into the quote value box, and you should be good to go. So after you've gotten rid of all of your errors, we'll go to step 5 and really walk through the submission part. So when you save, you continue, you don't have errors, it will push, the eProcurement will push you into review and submit. And at this point, you're going to have, you'll see here, I didn't circle it, but I really should have, this printable view. If you want to have a PDF of how we see your application, hit printable view and it will give you the printable view. This is really the only time in eProcurement where they give you the opportunity to download your work, which I think is, it's something I don't agree with about in eProcurement, but here we are. But anyway, take note, printable view, that's what you want to do. And then, you'll save your draft one more time, and then you'll go, and then you'll get into this, which is your last chance to review all of the data and confirm it's accurate. So basically, at this point, when you get to this stage, eProcurement is giving you, they've compiled your entire application as one long page, and you sort of scroll through it. You can see all of your answers. And so this is the screenshot of the top. If you scroll to the bottom, which is in the next slide, you should, you'll see where you can provide your electronic signature and actually start submitting. So in this, the electronic signature is, you have to put in your signature and your title first, and then click the little box on the top saying that you, that you attest it was you signing. If you click the box first and then put in the signature and the title, you get an error message. So just do it that way. Next time they'll put the box on the bottom so it's more logical. And then after that, you do that, you will submit. So you hit that submit button. It's super awesome. And once you submit, you will get a confirmation. Now, at this point, you will see that confirmation screen. If you don't see the confirmation screen, you haven't submitted. Within 24 hours, you should get something from eProcurement verifying that you have submitted. If you want to know before you get that email that's auto-generated from eProcurement, if you need to know that, you want to know before, just give me a call. Call me, email me, and I would be happy to confirm your submission. And then you'll know. And so that's really all there is to submitting. And now we are going to open up everything for questions. I see we have a few questions here, and so let's start. I see. Are you there, Beth? So I see here is. Let's just look at these questions.
Can you read them out loud?
Yep. Will there be a separate RFP that only focuses on parent engagement, or will this be the only one that focuses on both outreach, recruitment, and parent training?
So this RFP is specifically about family and community outreach. as the RFP states. I know that for those of you familiar with Head Start and our Chicago Early Learning programs, we have in the past had several contracts for various support services, and we are in the process of issuing all those support service contracts. Some of them look a little bit different, but this one, what I would say is that this is for exactly what it says. There are other subject matter expertise that we need in family and community engagement, Head Start family and community engagement, and that's not included in this RFP. This RFP is just for that grassroots outreach, parent ambassadors, and developing the leadership skills of those parent ambassadors.
Okay.
Hey, hi, Julia. This is Tom. I'm just going to, while you are reading off the questions, I'm just going to go to the next screen so people have your contact information. So it just appears on the screen, okay? Okay, sounds good.
So the next question is, the funding value states that up to $400,000 from December 1st, 2020 to November 30th, 2021. Will the expectation be that this proposal can only fund 5 staff only, and the main budget goes towards parent activities / stipends?
So I think the main thing to do here is to actually look at the cost proposal budget attachment. And you can see how, at least from the onset, the program has been envisioned. That it is definitely a labor, staffing kind of intensive sort of budget, with most of the expenditures going for staff and parent ambassadors, but it's kind of broken up on the cost proposal budget. And it anticipates hours, how many hours we anticipate are needed for various sorts of activities. So once you look at the cost proposal budget, you know, I'm available for questions after that.
Okay. Now, will the parent ambassadors also have to pass background checks?
So, you know, I think so, but I'm not sure. So if we can maybe issue an amendment on that, it may depend on whether or not they're getting stipend, or I think they will.
Okay, and
let
then
me double check and let me get back to you.
And so then here's another kind of a follow-up question, which is, will parent ambassadors who are receiving services from DCFS or have children currently in care be disqualified from becoming a parent ambassador?
I have to get back to you on that too.
It's a good question.
Yeah,
and then our final question here is, please explain more in detail what leverage means.
So I think that's about the non-federal share.
Okay.
So Head Start requires a match. Our match that we require is a 33% match. So we would like all of our contractors to make a good faith effort in order to provide a match for their budget. So if your budget is $200,000, 33% of that is the total. Add 33% of that to that. That's your total project cost, and 33% of that is provided through either in-kind donation, volunteer hours, other sort of administrative costs, and the like. There's a lot of information about the uniform guidance and about match costs in the RFP. So look under that section of the RFP. It is on page 10, RFP number H, letter H, RFP non-federal match guidance to respondents.
Okay. So these are the questions that we received. Are there any other questions that anybody would like to ask at this point? Here we go. Thank you. Are the listed full-time employees and numbers of ambassadors listed a guide or a requirement?
I guess You'll see in the cost proposal that there is hourly, that some of the activities for the parent ambassadors and for the staff is broken down by hourly, like how many hours the expectation is. So I think I would consider it a very strong guide or expectation. The cost proposal kind of locks you into certain kinds of structures.
There you go. Okay. So again, calling out for questions. There are other questions. Again, we do accept questions afterwards.
What about the questions that we received earlier?
Yeah, I'm just going to pull up the questions that I received yesterday. These are kind of, here we go. So these questions are sort of standard. The first question is about, is there an incumbent?
Yes, I think there is.
There is an incumbent. What is the budget, which I believe we discussed?
Right, it's $400,000 a year.
The length of the projects, the start to the end date, we also have discussed. That's in the RFP. Then are there any diversity goals? So no. Let's the kind of contracts that this department enters into are referred to as delegate agency contracts. A delegate agency contract is usually let for the provision of social services, and that it is exempted because of the nature of the content of the scopes of the contract. They generally are kind of exempted from diversity goals. We're almost always contracting with nonprofits, and nonprofits tend not to be the structure of a nonprofit from a business standpoint. They just don't get certified as being a minority owned or women owned or disability owned, like veteran owned, all of the different kinds of things. So in fact, we don't have diversity goals. We are curious, or we are interested, and that's reflected in the application questions about that the applicants can demonstrate familiarity and cultural competence with the populations they are serving, but that's what we're looking for more than we are looking for any kind of certification. And then the last question was, will you be providing a pre-conference attendee list with contact information so that we can network and partner? And yes, we can do that. Yep, so a few more questions have come up. So can you clarify the years of the contract and the total contract award annually?
So it's $400,000 annually. I believe it's 1 year with 1 or 2 extensions. You can actually look it up in the RFP on page, hang on, F, page 10. The term of contract will be December 1st, 2020 to November 30th, 2022. So it's 2 years, $400,000 a year. Based on need, availability of funds, and contractor performance, DFSS may extend this term for up to 1 additional year. So
Yes.
it's up to 3 years, it's $400,000 a year.
Yes. And so we are looking to have a 2-year initial term for $400,000 per year. And then provided that we are still, we have the money and your contract is in good standing, we will let an additional amendment, 1-year amendment, and then we will rebid the contract. And that's kind of standard for how the department operates in general. So So those were the questions that I received via email. We can incorporate those into the webinar questions in the webinar document. And then, yeah, okay, is there an MBWBE requirement? I don't see it in the RFP. That's because, as I just explained, there isn't one. And you're welcome. It says Gazelle shared that we have answered her funding question, and thank you. Thank you for listening. Are there any other questions? No? There you go. So again, if you don't have any questions, we will, close out this webinar, but you certainly have, we encourage you to ask questions should you have them. You can always email or call myself for your e-procurement kinds of questions, or call Beth about your programmatic questions. Oh, and then there's can you speak more about the incumbent? Well, Beth, there is an incumbent.
Somebody has been doing there's an organization that has been conducting grassroots outreach for us. So one of the things that and I think that this is outlined a little bit in the RFP, one of the things that we do with Head Start especially is that we bring in subject matter experts and outside contractors to help us ensure that agencies are and that DFSS is meeting all the Head Start performance standards and the Act. We don't have necessarily subject matter experts on staff, which is when we contract out things such as family and community outreach, strategic communications, dental, subject matter expertise in dental, for example. So all of these contracts have to be rebid on a regular basis based on the city's procurement rules, which is why we are rebidding all of these contracts this year. So if you've been following, you know that we've rebid the dental, the medical, the mental health, the nutrition, community needs assessment, strategic communications, professional development, training, coordination, so several. And I believe that there are a few more that are still to be issued. So this is just part of this regular periodic rebidding of all contracting.
And when will the webinar be posted? So the webinar will be posted as part of the first amendment, and we like to try to get them out within the week and a half. And that will be posted as an amendment to the RFP. And generally you'll get an email if you already are in the, if you've already started your application in e-procurement, you'll get something saying that the application has been amended, and that's how you will know. You'll also probably get an email from Beth telling you that the application has been amended if you want to go and look. So here we go. Let's see, any more questions? I feel like I'm having like a question auction. Yeah. So with that, we are really excited that you came to the webinar, that you are interested in this funding. We're really looking forward to reading your applications, and please do give us a call if you have questions. Beth or Tom, do you guys have any?
Or email us.
Or
Is that-
Yeah,
or
just
email?
your
Was it-
contact information. If you want to, you can feel free to read your contact information off on the page. Just so we have a, or it's right here that everyone's been seeing, I think. And I think people are just thanking you now, and they did a lot of clear answers. So did you need to go over this last slide or anything, or I think it's self-explanatory. It's up to you.
Yeah, I think we're pretty good here. How about you, Beth?
Okay. All right. I think
Thanks,
the
everybody.
last slide, just thanks everyone. So I'll let you all go. Have a great day.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Take care.